Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Clark. I'm the founder and CEO of Clark College Consulting, the superhero of college planning. And I've been getting a lot of emails, a lot of requests via social media to talk about paying for college, different ways to pay for college, especially with the market volatility we're having today. And so I brought in an expert, a friend, a client, all in one, Chad Mangum. And I'm so excited to have Chad because he is an investment advisor, he is a fiduciary. He is the owner of Blue Wolf Financial. I guess owner is the proper term. Well, Chad, you tell me, is that the proper term to use?
Owner, principal, founder, whatever. It's all kind of synonymous in that way.
Well, Chad, tell us, well, before we get into some of the questions, tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about Blue Wolf Financial.
So a little bit about my background. I'm a native Charlottean, I was born in South Georgia, but I was raised here all my life. I've been in the financial services industry now for going on 14 years.
Wow.
I started out primary working in the retirement planning space, and as I continued to grow in my practice, we branched out and really started working in the holistic planning to cover even the college preparation. And that's one of the areas in which you and I have really partnered on to make sure that families can A, afford college, and B, that they're planning for it in a proper manner.
Yeah, that's really, really important. When I talk to my parents, it's all very important to get that financial fit when it comes to college, and that is figuring out a way to pay for it, right? Making sure we're making a good decision on the front end so we don't make a bad decision that can affect their retirement or affect a parent's ability to have a comfortable life later on if they pick the wrong college. But that's a different discussion. Let's
Right.
talk about 529 plans today because, again, I'm getting a lot of questions about 529 plans. And I'm getting them from all directions, from parents that have newborns to parents that are in high school. So kind of give me your perspective on a 529 plan. What are your pros? What are your cons when it comes to college planning?
We use the 529 plans as, again, one of our buckets, if you will, right? We all have multiple buckets in our financial planning strategy, right?
Right.
And the 529 plays an integral part of the educational bucket, right? And how do you really set aside money so that it grows tax deferred, and then you can take it out 100% tax free? All those growth, the earnings can come out, and you will not have to pay any taxes on it. A lot like a Roth IRA, as long as it's utilized for educational expenses. So that can really prepare people to have that sum of money to help pay for those educational expenses as the cost of it continues to grow.
Right.
That's a big challenge for us.
The cons, if you will, for 529 plan, one is it does affect your financial aid formula. So if you have the ability to get financial aid, it's not a huge impact if it's owned by the parent. So let me give you an example. If a parent owns a 529 plan, let's say they have $10,000 in a 529 plan, if you put that in the FAFSA form, the financial aid calculation, you would multiply the 10,000 times 5.64%, and whatever that number is, that's how much financial aid that you potentially wouldn't receive. Now, that's not a huge impact by any means, but it could be an impact. So you want to kind of consider that. But many of the parents aren't going to qualify for financial aid. Many parents are going to go to state schools, or students are going to go to state schools, and it's really not going to play a big role into it. But if your son and daughter is planning on going to, a very prestigious private school or a very expensive private school, we might want to consider that. So when you are at kindergarten, you probably don't want to even consider it. Just put money in a 529 plan, it'll all work itself out. But if you're a freshman or sophomore in high school, you want to take that into consideration. Should I put money in a 529 plan or some other type of investment, because it might affect my financial aid? Hopefully that makes sense, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Now, you were
Absolutely.
mentioning, go ahead, Chad, I'm sorry.
No, and some of the 529s, some of the cons of 529s as well, since we're speaking of some of the quote unquote negative components are, might not always get state deductibility with that, right? So whenever you make those contributions, especially like in North Carolina, they eliminated the state deduction several years back. You and I were talking, and you reminded me that South Carolina does still allow for that deduction. So it depends on the state. That's one of the things. Now, also state-specific plans vary company to company. So you may not get the same investment lineup in North Carolina that you would in Virginia, for instance. And I quite frankly, since we do not get the state deductibility here, I prefer to utilize the Virginia plan just because of the investment lineup inside of that, because you're limited to those investments that are in the actual 529 plan. You don't have a lot of open architecture like you do in other investment worlds. So that's another big point, I think, when it comes to leveraging the 529s.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even think about mentioning that. So if you live in North Carolina, that doesn't mean you're limited to invest in the North Carolina plan. You can invest in the one in Virginia or Alaska or any of the 50 states that have a 529 plan and that are open, that allow other investors to invest. So that's a great point. And so you can go and work with someone like Chad and figure out which one is the best fit for you. So you're not limited to just the state that you live in, which is awesome.
Absolutely. We have at least the ability to go across state lines for to choose whatever investment strategy fits your investment profile.
Right. Great question. Great comment. Some of the questions I'm getting right now for seniors specifically, and for parents with seniors, is that, they've had 529 plans for many years. They're planning on paying for college using that money, but the market's gone down a little bit. And I've seen two scenarios. The first scenario is the age-based 529 plans, meaning that as the child gets older, the investments get a little bit less riskier. So as they get closer to graduating high school, they're in very conservative funds. And so their funds went down some, but not a lot, which is good. However, I've also spoken to some families where they weren't in that type of plan. They were in very aggressive, trying to kind of catch up, if you will, because they didn't start out at a young age saving for college. And because they were in a very aggressive 529 plan, they actually lost a lot of money over the last few weeks. And so we're talking about two different scenarios, right? And so you can't get a blanket statement and say, hey, if you just do this, this works for every senior family, right? So that's why you have to sit down with them and say, okay, what situation are you in? How does it work? And kind of come up with a plan. So kind of what's your thoughts on that?
Well, we use a number of different strategies, a number of different types of accounts, so that we can help pay for college. I agree with what you're saying. There's not a one size fits all when it comes to 529 and college planning. It's just, that would be like me saying, hey, Ryan, you're going to have two kids and a wife and a dog and a cat. And no, it just doesn't fit. Right. When it comes to that, I will say that we use a number of different investment strategies. We could possibly use life insurance. Mm-hmm. It depends on the age of the individual. Even leveraging a Roth IRA, if you have an older parent that has younger children and they're nearing 59 and a half, that could be a strategy. You're still achieving the same thing. You have open architecture within the investment selection, and as long as you take it out and they're qualified 59 and a half and several other things that you meet, it accomplishes the same exact goal. I love also leveraging life insurance potentially, but you have to leverage life insurance. You have to do that at a younger age for the beneficiary, right? So that it gives it time to grow and to quote unquote mature inside of the life insurance. So
yeah, when you say life insurance, sorry, Chad, you're talking about cash value life insurance, not term insurance, obviously.
Absolutely. Cash value life insurance is a tremendous planning tool, and it accomplishes a number of different things in that point. It accomplishes having life insurance on the individual. So in the event that something negative does happen, they have the death, the cash benefit upon the one's death, right? They also have the cash value inside of it. And then there's some other unique options that you can add to life insurance to cover some additional items that may be unknown. So life insurance is a great way to utilize that. So again, it goes back to the bucket strategy.
You're exactly right. So sometimes when I sit down with my parents and we're talking about it, I love sometimes suggesting Roth IRA for the student if they have earned income, or if they can work for mom and dad and mom and dad has some extra cash flow, then they can start putting that into a Roth IRA, and that could either be a retirement account or a college savings account.
Correct.
So there are some huge advantages to that, and you can pull that money out out of a Roth to pay for college expenses tax-free as well. And so that's why it's so important. The downside of a Roth is you're limited on how much you could put in there. And of course, you have to have earned income, right?
Correct.
The student has to earn the income to be able to qualify to put money in a Roth. But there's ways around that. And again, that's why college planning, that's why parents hire us to kind of help them with that, right?
Correct.
One of the big advantages, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chad.
Well, I was going to say, I've even had a couple circumstances where I've leveraged a 401k, the Roth inside of a 401k,
Sure.
because you can make greater contributions. But again, those are certain circumstances that you have to look very closely at to make sure it fits. Excuse me, make sure it fits that scenario.
That's a good point. It's a really good point. And one of the big advantages that life insurance has had for many years when it, versus a 529 plan, there's of course pros and cons of each one of these, but one of the things I loved about life insurance is that you could pull that cash value out and use it to pay off student loans. So it was a great incentive for students to graduate and then pull that money out and pay off those loans. Well, you couldn't do that with a 529 plan because that wasn't a qualified expense anymore. You could pull it out to pay student loans out of a 529 plan, but you were taxed federally and state on that money. So the advantage of the 529 plan just wasn't there, right?
Correct.
But in December of this year, Congress approved the Secure Act. And what's great about this in the Secure Act and the 529 plan is now federal law states that if you pull money out to pay off any student loans, it is tax-free federally now, which is really cool. And so that's a huge advantage to a 529 plan. And so that makes it a little bit easier now for someone like yourself to say, hey, this is a good option for you to potentially use for student loans as well. Now, I tell my parents to kind of think about this because not every state has approved that with the federal government. So some states have went in and adjusted their laws and said, yes, if you pull money out of a 529, it is also tax-free statewide. But not every state has done that yet. The state of North Carolina, I don't think is tax-free as of today, but again, we have to check with the CPA on that. The state of South Carolina, I do think you can pull that money out to pay for student loans and it's tax-free, but again, check with your CPA on that. I'm not a CPA, neither are you, so I don't want to give you the wrong advice if you're listening to this. Another way, this is the Secure Act has changed, is now you can pull this money out, 529 plans, to pay for K through 12 expenses. So that is another option. But again, you need to check with each state as well because it's taxed a little bit differently for each state. So some huge advantages to the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Act that was approved back in December. So that was something I wanted to bring to everyone's attention.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So Chad, I just wanted to tell you, thank you for coming. Is there any other, before I let you go, is there any other things, comments you wanted to make about 529 plans we didn't discover today or didn't talk about?
I think you hit a lot on the key points. Again, I think one of the number one things that you've said today, and we both tried to reiterate, is the simple fact that sitting down and working with professionals can really help save a lot of headache, a lot of time, and a tremendous amount of money in the long haul. Right. I think we both work for fair wages, if you will, and a lot of people have a hard time paying for those. But at the end of the day, this is what we do. I'm not going to go. I'm a financial advisor, and I work with Ryan with our college planning for our daughter. Why? Because he's the expert in that area, and vice versa. So leveraging professionals for what they do can add tremendous benefit and value to you.
Yeah, it just makes sense. The analogy I give, it's let's say you're going to buy a Mercedes and it costs $50,000. Well, if you could hire someone and they can save you $20,000 on that $50,000 car, and it costs, I don't know, $2,000 to do it, would you do it? Of course we would. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with working with parents and students. Say, hey, you're making a huge investment, whether it's college or your retirement, and working with professionals that know what they're doing, that have experience on this, it's just going to save you time and money. Just makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ryan, thank you very much for including me in this video today. I really appreciate it. I look forward to continuing working with you on our daughter's college planning. And then we've got another one coming up in about 13 years. So
yeah, it's been a great chat. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to have a lot more questions come up when it comes to college planning, paying for college. And I look forward to having you back. So thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.